What do we do?
Well, the first part we do together, the next parts we do on our own. So we're going to start off together. So separating mixtures. So sometimes you have something that's a mixture, and when you have a mixture, you don't always want it to stay mixed. Sometimes you want to separate some parts out. Now, how you separate a mixture depends on what the mixture is. What could you do with this soup here? Let's say that you were eating this soup and you don't like carrots. What could you do to get rid of the carrots? Bailey, what could you do to get rid of those carrots in the soup? Okay, you could take the spoon and just scoop out the carrots, right? You could also just eat everything else first, and then when the carrots are left, you just get rid of the carrots. But what about the soda? What if you don't want the sugar in the soda? Could you just use a spoon and scoop out the sugar from the soda? No. Noah, what do you think? Yeah, you can't do that. Not with a spoon. You'd have to do something different to that. If you wanted to get rid of the sugar in your soda, you'd have to actually put it into like a pot, put it in on the stove, and you'd have to heat it up. You'd have to boil it. And then you could get rid of like the water, and what you'd be left with would be the flavor and the sugar. You can still separate it, just a little harder when you're talking about something that's the solution, soda. Yes, Jaylene. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You're right. They sell a couple of different ones, and they have the soda machines like we see in restaurants, and they sell other things that you can get at your house that will make soda, and then all you have to do is add in whatever syrup you want, and you can get some syrup that doesn't have any sugar in it, or you can get ones that have different flavors, so that way you can kind of make whatever soda you feel like drinking. So what about this? If I took some squares, so these 5 squares, and then I took 5 marbles, and I put them all into this box, how could I separate out that mixture? What could I do to separate my mixture of marbles and squares? Brianna, what could I do? Maybe. Take a look at my box here. What do you notice about this box, Brianna? Okay, so it's a rectangular box and it's got holes in it. How could I use the box to help me separate my mixture? The marbles would actually fit through the holes. How come the squares won't?
Does it-
So the squares are the wrong shape. But the marbles, since they're the same shape as the holes, if I took my mixture and I turned the box upside down, the marbles could just fall out. And then I would have marbles and squares separated. All right, but what if we have a mixture that's more complicated, has more parts? If I mixed up sand with sawdust, with some iron pieces, salt, and some marbles and water. I put all those into a bowl and I just stirred it up real good. We'd have a lot of things to separate. In our last one, it was just two items. Now we have five, six, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things to separate. Do you think separating this mixture would be as easy as separating the marbles and the squares? Probably not. There's a lot more here. Bella, let's make sure we're focused. Let's take a look. Okay. What if I wanted to get rid of the sawdust? Which one of these could I use to get rid of my sawdust from my mixture? Sawdust. So Alexa, sawdust is this stuff here. Sawdust happens when you have like big pieces of wood and you're cutting it up to make something. And usually you use a saw, which is kind of where it gets its name from. The saw goes and it scrapes, tears little chunks of the wood, which end up as this. So whenever you're cutting, like if you look at someone sawing a piece of lumber or a piece of wood, and they're going like this, if you look at the ends, you'll see little, it looks like dust. Like the dust you find on stuff that's old that no one uses anymore. And it just falls down. But really, it's little tiny pieces of wood that are being scraped off of whatever it is you're cutting. Jaylene, what do you think? What could I use to get rid of the sawdust? This one?
Yes.
Maybe, but if the sawdust is real small, like it is here, it might go through this. So I need to use another tool, something that would get rid of little pieces of wood. Just regular water won't just clean it because it's not always a dirty piece of wood. But who can tell me what will always happen when you put a piece of wood in water? Violet?
It, it kind of
It can if you leave it in there for a long time, but
make it. Um, if you got wood wet, kind of smell.
maybe a little bit. But Violet, let me ask you. If I had a wooden block and
Yeah.
let's say I was walking around a swimming pool. Oh, that's right. Brianna, what was your idea? What tool could we use? A spoon. Why could I use a spoon, Brianna?
Chip,
You're right.
and they won't.
They won't fall out. But so again, let's say I had a piece of wood and I was walking around a swimming pool and I dropped the wood into the swimming pool. Do I have to dive all the way to the bottom to get the wood, Brianna? No, because the wood does what in water? It'll float. And since sawdust is little tiny pieces of wood, they'll all float to the top of my water. And I could just use the spoon, scoop all the sawdust out of my mixture. Yes, Jaylene. Well, thank you for reminding me, Brianna. Oh, okay. So Brianna's absolutely right. The little pieces of wood would float to the top of my mixture because they're floating in water. And then I could use the spoon and just scoop them all out. And you're right, if they're little tiny pieces, I could scoop a lot of them out with just one spoon. Yes, Bella. We had said that earlier, but like Brianna said, if they're little tiny pieces, depending on what strainer I use, they might go through. But the spoon will be easy. You could easily just scoop them all out because all the sawdust would float up to the top. Okay, so I used my spoon. Now, what tool could I use that would get rid of the iron piece? What tool could I use to separate the iron pieces out of my mixture? Violet? Okay, and why would the magnet work?
because it's iron.
Okay, it's iron, and iron is magnetic. So if I use the magnet and I move it over my mixture, all the pieces of iron will be attracted to the magnet and I could just pull them out. Very good. All right, I've used my spoon, I've used my magnet. What if I want to get rid of the glass marbles? What could I use to get rid of my glass marble? Bella? Well, if I use the coffee filters, you're right. There's also a mixture of, there's also sand in this mixture. And if I use the coffee filter, I'm going to be picking up sand and marbles. But I just want to take the marbles out. So what will let me take out just the marbles? Chase? What could I use? The coffee filter, we said no. So it's either the strainer or the stove. Okay, the sifter, the strainer. If I use that, the little pieces of dirt or dust, I'll be able to, or sorry, the sand won't get stuck here in the strainer. It'll fall through. So when I pull the strainer through, all I'll pick up is the marbles. So I'd have three things left in this mixture. I'd have some salt, I'd have sand, and I'd have water. If I want to get rid of the sand, what could I use to get rid of the sand? Jaylene? My coffee filters. Because just like in the morning when people make their coffee, they don't get all those little coffee grounds inside of their cup, right? The same thing would happen here. If I use these and I pour all my water through, my salt will go through, but all the little pieces of sand will get stuck in the coffee filter. Which means if I was going to remove the water and just be left with the salt, what could I use? What's my last tool that I haven't used yet? Bella, what's the last tool I haven't gotten a chance to use yet? The stove. If I put the water with the salt mixed into it on the stove and I let it boil, I keep boiling it and boiling it and boiling it, all the water will leave and all I will have left in my pan is my salt. Okay, this next slide is for you. Well, not just Bella, but for everyone. You're going to have to look around your house and find at least 5 mixtures. So you could look around your room or around your whole house, whatever you want. But you're going to try to find some mixtures and write them here. And again, you need at least 5. If you find more than 5, fantastic. Yes, Alexa. Something that's already mixed together. So you want to look around your house, and when you find a mixture, you can write it down. And we want a total of at least 5. If you find more, fantastic. It could be either one. So it could be something that is hard to separate or something that's easy to separate. It's up to you. But something you would have in your house. Yes, Jadine.
What are we doing?
So right now you're working on the very last slide in that presentation, slide number 10. You need to think of the things you have in your house or look around your house and write down 5 different mixtures that you have. So Jada, just think about what you have at your house, what you have in your room, in the kitchen, in the living room, all over your house, and think of different things that are mixtures. And like Alexa asked, it could be something that's easy to separate, or it could be something that's hard to separate. You're going to click there and write down those 5 different things. Yes, Bailey. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, Jaylene. No, right now. Chase, if you can't write, you might be on the wrong one. Go back, just close that tab. Go back to the Google Classroom. Go back to Science, and then open up the assignment again. Because if you're working on the old one, it wasn't set up for you to write. That's why I fixed it. Yes, Messiah, it needs to be mixtures. Now, if you find a solution, that's also okay because a solution is a kind of mixture. And like Alexa asked earlier, if it's something hard to separate, if it's a solution, that's fine. That's still a kind of mixture.